The following program is brought to you by Cloudcast Media, a podcast leader in developing shows to elevate local brands, local stories, and local storytellers. Cloudcast, bringing ears and minds home.
The San Diego Union Tribune and Retirement Strategies Group present the Union Tribune Community Spotlight Show with your host, Drew Schlossberg.
I'm Drew Schlossberg of the San Diego Union Tribune, and always good to have our longtime friend calling in the studio today, and that is Dr. Emily Young. She's the Executive Director of the Nonprofit Institute at the University of San Diego, housed in the School of Leadership and Education Sciences. And I was thinking about this today, Emily, and Emily was a senior leader at the San Diego Foundation for how many years?
16.
16 years, and now you've been in this position here for 3.5 years. I can't believe it's been 3.5 years. But I think Emily was one of our very first guests when we launched our radio show in 2007.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, we've been doing it for, I believe, 13 years in October. And I think you came in early in the gate, did you not? Because you've been on quite a bit.
Yes,
yeah.
That's right.
How many times have you been on, you think? Because you get a gold watch if you hit the 20th level.
You know, that's a good question. I think it's been maybe nearly half a dozen times.
Oh, at least. Yeah. I think you're shorting yourself on that aspect of it. Talk a little bit about what was going on with USD Souls and what the Nonprofit Institute does. I know it is celebrating its 18th year, which I can't believe. You know, it's formed in 2002, and then what we can do to support you.
Absolutely. So I'm very excited to be at the University of San Diego. As you know, it's a university that's really values-driven in the approach to teaching and research and everything we do in the community. So we're very much about promoting community change-making, serving as an anchor institution in this region, and certainly in the School of Leadership and Education Sciences. I like to say we're the School of Service because we train teachers,
right.
Educators with our Department of Teaching and Learning. We also train leaders with our Department of Leadership Studies, with which we're most closely affiliated at the Nonprofit Institute. And we also train guidance counselors with our marriage and family counseling program. And then, of course, we have the Naval ROTC. So the Nonprofit Institute, what do we do in the School of Leadership and Education Sciences? We're really all about developing mission-driven leaders and organizations, helping them be strong and effective to have the greatest impact in the San Diego region, and then providing them and others with action-oriented research to really help us protect and enhance our quality of life.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting, and of course, this fits beautifully into what you did for 16 years at the San Diego Foundation. And, you know, and thank you, first of all, very much for, you know, getting in knee-deep, and her colleague, Laura Dietrich, and Emily were asked by us to go ahead and enhance our annual Making a Difference guide. And I think they did a beautiful job. We added about 24 more pages to the guide, and encourage anybody who has not seen this to pick it up. You can get it online at uniontribune.com and just go ahead and do a search for Making a Difference in this aspect of it. So thank you for your work on that. Obviously, it aligns beautifully what you folks are doing. Maybe we'll chat about some of the things that you were responsible for in the guide. How many nonprofits are there in San Diego County?
There are nearly 12,000
right.
nonprofits.
And exactly. And most of them are significantly small. We all know that.
That's correct.
And anybody who has worked with a nonprofit knows that the people that work in these nonprofits, you know, the heart of gold, you know, salt of the earth, they are doing it because it's the right thing to do. And most of them are, you know, barely hanging on with a shoestring, and that's okay with them, because if you think the idea that these folks are bringing in millions of dollars, they're not. They do millions of dollars in services and all that business. What do you think is the biggest misperception about nonprofits, not just in San Diego, but in general?
Well, I would say there are a few things. One is this idea that innovation, you only see innovation in the private sector.
Right.
And I would say that the heart and soul of the nonprofit sector is really this kind of entrepreneurial spirit. You see these organizations that form to do what? Well, they're taking care of those issues, those intractable issues, really difficult issues in the community that business isn't in a position to take on, nor is government. They can't or maybe won't take it on. So what happens? People from the community get together to address a critical issue, whether it's providing some kind of after-school educational program or grappling with our growing problem of food insecurity in San Diego, or helping to build new trails and working in partnership with the Parks and Rec department to do that. And so that's one thing I would say is just that entrepreneurship and innovation. That's all over the nonprofit sector, and even old organizations like Goodwill. They developed an enterprise, a very, very creative enterprise to make money to do good in the community.
Right. And I think also that, people have this perception that what's a nonprofit, so we don't need to pay anybody to work in a nonprofit, which is absolutely foolish thinking. What do you think they sit there and do the stuff for free? I mean, listen, they need to put food on their own tables as well. And I get that question all the time.
Yeah.
Well, why are they making X? And I go, because they're doing such unbelievable work, and the people they're touching and the lives they're changing that no one else will do or has done or has the expertise to do, I think is amazing. The other thing, I've been honored, as you know, to be on a variety of boards, Junior Achievement and USD Souls on the advisory board and so forth, is the misperception that, I don't have Bill Gates money, so how can I help out? Or,
that's right.
I can't do 15 hours a week of stuff. I've got 5 jobs and all this. And they say, $5 is just as important. Listen, if you got Bill Gates money, great, no one's going to turn it down. But just get engaged or show you're engaged. And if it's only 1 hour a month you can give, do it. Maybe next month it's 2 and so forth.
I am so glad you brought that up.
Yeah.
That is so critically important. When you think about nonprofit organizations and our long tradition of philanthropy in this country, it's over a century old. It had to do with early laws in this country to incentivize charitable giving.
Right.
And so nonprofit organizations are an essential fabric of our civil society. And it's important that everybody give. And you can give your time, your talent, your treasure.
Right.
And donations, large and small, make a difference. And I'm glad you mentioned the smaller donations, because one of the things that we're tracking now is that, if you look at the nonprofit sector and some of the shifts in the 2017 tax law, which actually eliminated an incentive for a lot of lower income and middle income households to give, because we doubled the standard deduction.
Right.
What we're seeing is actually a decline in giving. And when you think about it, nonprofits serve all of us. We want everybody to give and support them, because when it becomes a smaller pool of donors that are supporting those organizations, then what we're missing out on is having everybody involved in that fabric of civil society and delivering those services and helping to influence the way they're delivered.
Yeah, without question. We're chatting with Dr. Emily Young. She's the executive director of the Nonprofit Institute at the University of San Diego, housed in the School of Leadership and Ed Sciences. And I think, like almost anything in this very fragmented world, especially from a communication standpoint, you know this as well as any, you really got to hit the message once, twice, 400 times. And I guess that's not necessarily new. It's just new for the fact that we're so fragmented. And back not too long ago, we weren't as fragmented, and you could get out your message quite or a little easier than it is right now. Talk a little bit about how important that is. You folks do so many things in the world of nonprofits. The research, obviously, is your benchmark, of course, and actually, heaven forbid, we actually base it on data. What a shock that is, right? But, talk about, do you give advice on how people can get their word out too? Is that part of some of the things you do?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. We think it's really important that nonprofit organizations have many tools to communicate what they do, more effectively engage their volunteers and keep those volunteers involved, as well as donors and others in the community supportive of their work. And so one of the things that we do at the Institute is to help organizations really better understand what an impact they're making. And to do that, let's just step one one step back.
Right.
It's really, what's the outcome you're seeking to achieve in advancing your mission as an organization? Helping organizations really define that, and then look at, what are ways in which we can measure that?
Right.
And track that over time. And that's one of the most important things you can do as an organization is really document that and track that data over time. But oftentimes, nonprofit organizations don't have that opportunity to step back and do that on their own.
Right.
So that's what we can help them with, and kind of program design and evaluation. And then more broadly, helping people then communicate the results, tell their story.
Right. And I think what's so important about that, you mentioned there's 12,000 nonprofits, of course, in this area, and many of them are, don't have much of a budget or any budget, and, to that aspect of it. And, literally a very few in terms percentage-wise, are able to, hire a staff of 15 or 20 and all that, very, very few in this area. And, I think some of the things maybe we can chat about when we come back is, okay, our listeners are going, listen, I want to volunteer for one. You got some advice. Two, I do work for a nonprofit. How do we get engaged with the Nonprofit Institute? Do you charge for your services?
Mm-hmm.
If we were to do a study on X, Y, and Z, what is it? Can you evaluate us and tell us if we're doing the right thing? So think about that when we come back from break on that. And then, most importantly, what can our listeners do to support the Institute? Okay,
great.
Donations, volunteer, give us advice, whatever the case may be, and so we'll be able to go ahead and get that squared away when we return with Dr. Emily Young. She is the Executive Director of the Nonprofit Institute at the University of San Diego School of Leadership and Ed Sciences. I'm Drew Schlossberg, and you're listening to another edition of the Community Spotlight Show here on Cloudcast Media Radio. We are brought to you by Retirement Strategies Group.
Cloudcast 180. Powerful people, powerful stories, 180 seconds.
Welcome to Cloudcast 180. We're here today with the president and CEO of Father Joe's Villages. Welcome to Deacon Jim Vargas.
Thank you, Charles. Good to be with you.
We have 3 minutes. Let's hit it fast and furiously. We're going to talk this morning with you about San Diego being a very expensive city, which creates a housing crisis, which is exacerbating the homeless crisis in San Diego. Let's talk about your leadership on this issue.
Sure, absolutely. We do have an affordable housing crisis here in San Diego. In fact, if you ask about the number one issue why people fall into homelessness, it's lack of affordability. And so they fall onto the streets, especially when rents go up, and rents are very expensive here. So we at Father Joe's Villages focus tremendously on housing. In fact, about 40% of our intervention is placing individuals into permanent and affordable housing. All right, so shows you the extent of what we do. And of course, there's services that go along with this, because in order for people to retain their housing, their dwellings, they have to have the services that they're necessary, whether it's mental health services or substance use disorder services, whatever that is. We have a Turning the Key initiative, whereby we will be introducing 2,000 affordable housing units into the community during the next number of years. In fact, we just closed on a deal to purchase and refurbish a motel in the South Bay area. It's going to add 83 permanent supportive housing units. Next week, we'll be closing financially on a groundbreaking that will have 14-story building, 407 units of housing as well, taking about 550 people off the street. So housing is extremely important.
Which means you're investing a lot of capital. How are you finding that capital to solve the housing crisis in San Diego for homeless folks? 90 to 95%
of our funding is public funding. Various sources, whether it be from the state, it be local, county, city, municipality. So most of it is public funding. There's tax credits that are involved there. The capital stack is quite large, actually.
So you're finding the land, you're finding the capital, you're changing lives. How are you minimizing the risk of future homelessness for these clients of yours? We're
minimizing it through our services. We need to make sure that in order for them to retain the housing, that they receive the services that they need, that are holistic and are comprehensive to their specific needs.
That's fantastic. Deacon Jim, in the last 10 years, your organization has taken 11,000 folks from homelessness to a home.
So I congratulate you. Any closing thoughts for our audience?
No, that's what it's all about. And, I